Betrayal cuts deeper than any blade, but what happens when the one who betrays you brings their lover to mock you on your own turf? That's exactly what happened to me, and trust me, I wasn't about to let it slide. My name is Alex, a 38-year-old self-made businessman. I thought I had the perfect life, a beautiful wife, Emma, who I adored, and a cozy home where we shared countless memories. Emma, 35, had been the love of my life for over 12 years. She was charming, witty, and always knew how to light up a room, or so I thought. Things began to fall apart when I started noticing small changes in her behavior. Late nights at work, a constant attachment to her phone, and that guilty, faraway look in her eyes. At first, I brushed it off, blaming it on the stresses of life. And then there was him, a tall, cocky man named Ryan, Emma's so-called work friend. I knew something was off, but I didn't want to believe it, until I saw it with my own eyes. Emma and I had met in college, where our love story started with laughter and late-night study sessions. She was the vibrant, optimistic one, and I was her steady, supportive partner. We married soon after graduation, and life seemed perfect, until it wasn't. About a year ago, Emma began working as an event planner for a prestigious firm. That's where she met Ryan, a wealthy entrepreneur who frequently hired her company for his lavish parties. Ryan was the kind of man who thrived on attention, flashy cars, designer suits, and an air of arrogance that screamed, "I get what I want." Emma would often come home talking about Ryan, but at the time, I didn't think much of it. She described him as demanding but brilliant, a man who pushed people to their limits. Little did I know those conversations were the seeds of something far darker. Ryan began giving Emma special attention, long lunches under the guise of work meetings, late-night calls about event details, and eventually, expensive gifts. At first, Emma resisted. She would come home looking guilty, brushing off his advances as harmless flirting. But Ryan was persistent. He played on her insecurities, complimenting her in ways I hadn't thought to in years. "You're too extraordinary for a simple life," he told her once. "You deserve someone who sees that." I admit, life had made me complacent. I worked long hours, and though I provided everything Emma could ask for, I'd stopped noticing the little things, her favorite wine, the way she loved quiet Sunday mornings, or the new dress she'd bought. Ryan, on the other hand, noticed everything. It wasn't long before their connection crossed the line. A business trip out of town became their first opportunity to act on the chemistry they'd been building. Emma later claimed it just happened, but I knew better. Affairs don't just happen. They're a series of choices, and she made every single one. From that point on, Emma started lying more easily. Work ran late, became a regular excuse, and she began guarding her phone like a secret vault. The warmth in her eyes when she looked at me was replaced by something colder, something distant. One night, I found a receipt for an expensive dinner for two in her purse. The date on it didn't match the night she said she'd been at a work meeting. When I confronted her, she laughed nervously, saying it was just a client dinner. I wanted to believe her, but my gut told me otherwise. It wasn't until I saw them together, near our home, that my worst fears were confirmed. It was a calm evening, the kind that used to feel peaceful after a long day. I had just returned home from work and decided to take a short walk to clear my head. As I rounded the corner near our house, my world stopped. There she was, Emma, standing under the dim glow of a streetlight. But she wasn't alone. Ryan had his arms wrapped around her, his face too close to hers, his smirk radiating arrogance. My blood boiled as I froze in disbelief. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming, but the gut-wrenching reality hit me like a freight train. I stormed toward them, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and hurt. "What does this mean, Emma?" I yelled, my fists clenched at my sides. Emma jumped, startled, but Ryan didn't even flinch. Instead, he turned to me with a smug grin and tightened his grip on her waist. "Get lost, loser," he sneered. "She's with me now. She'll take care of me, and then she'll come back to you when I'm done." My vision blurred with rage, and I stepped closer, glaring at him. "Who do you think you are?" I spat, my voice rising. You think you can walk into my life and take everything from me? Before Ryan could respond, two large men emerged from the shadows, his bodyguards. They moved quickly, positioning themselves between us. Ryan raised his hand and smirked again. Gentlemen, make sure he doesn't bother us again. One of the bodyguards lunged at me, but adrenaline and anger were on my side. I dodged his punch and delivered a swift uppercut, sending him crashing to the ground. The second man hesitated but came at me with equal force. I sidestepped his attack and knocked him down with a solid blow to his ribs. Ryan's smirk faltered for the first time as he watched his so-called protection crumple to the ground. I turned to him, my chest heaving with anger. "Do you have anything else to say?" I growled. Emma stood frozen, her face pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Ryan, meanwhile, tried to back away, his confidence now replaced with fear. "This isn't over," he stammered, before retreating into the night, leaving his bodyguards groaning on the pavement. I turned to Emma, my heart breaking despite my fury. "You betrayed me," I said, my voice cracking. "In my own home, near my own family. How could you do this to me?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't stay to watch them fall. I walked away, leaving her standing there, alone and speechless. The night after the confrontation, I couldn't sleep. The adrenaline had faded, but the anger still burned deep inside me. Emma's betrayal wasn't just about cheating. It was the way she made a mockery of everything we had built together. And Ryan, well, he needed to pay for everything. I spent the entire night planning. The kind of revenge I was going to get wasn't going to be messy or loud. It had to be surgical, precise, and unforgettable. I knew the most effective way to hurt Ryan was by hitting him where it would truly sting: his business. Ryan's company was known for throwing extravagant events, making millions from high-end clients, and his arrogance was as big as his success. He flaunted his wealth, his power, and most of all, his ability to manipulate anyone who got in his way. But what if I could flip the script? What if I could take him down with his own ego? I spent the next few days gathering information, tracking his investments, his personal dealings, and most importantly, his business associates. I found a weak link in his operations, a supplier he was heavily dependent on, but had recently gotten into some financial trouble. That supplier owed Ryan a large sum, and in the business world, debts like that don't just go unnoticed. I made a call to my lawyer and began working with him discreetly. I needed to buy up a chunk of Ryan's debts, legally, of course. My goal wasn't just to take his money, but to make him sweat, to make him question every move he made. But the plan didn't stop there. Emma thought she could just walk back into my life when Ryan was done with her, but I wasn't going to make it that easy. I knew she'd eventually try to reach out, probably with some apology or excuse about how everything was a mistake. But I didn't need her anymore. Instead, I took a different route. I knew Emma wanted a divorce, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of getting away with everything unscathed. I started preparing the paperwork, ensuring I would get full custody of our kids. I wasn't about to let her walk out of this with a clean slate, not after everything she'd done. I kept my emotions in check, hiding behind a calm, calculating exterior. I met with my lawyer regularly, laying out the foundations for my revenge. And when the day came for Emma to try and come crawling back, she didn't realize she had already lost everything. A week had passed since the confrontation, and everything was falling into place. Ryan's empire began to crumble, bit by bit. The supplier I'd manipulated into a corner was now demanding the full payment, and Ryan's business deals were collapsing under the pressure. He was panicking, desperately trying to salvage what little was left of his reputation. But I could see it in his eyes every time he walked into a meeting. It was over for him. Meanwhile, Emma had made several attempts to reach out. Text messages, emails, even a voicemail apologizing for her actions. She begged for a second chance, claiming it was all a mistake, that she was lost and confused. The woman who once vowed to love and honor me was now begging me for mercy. But there was no mercy to be had. One day, I arranged a meeting at the place where it all began, our old home. I asked Emma to come, promising to finally have a conversation about the future. When she arrived, she had that same hopeful look in her eyes, the one I'd once loved. But there was no hope for her now. I didn't speak a word at first. I simply handed her the divorce papers, the ones that would strip her of everything, our assets, the house, and worst of all, our children. She looked at me, wide-eyed, confused. "Alex, what is this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "You wanted a fresh start, didn't you?" I replied coldly. "Well, here it is." Her eyes searched mine, and for a moment I could see the guilt and regret flicker behind the tears. But I wasn't moved. Not anymore. "What about Ryan?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. He'll help me get through this." I almost laughed. "Ryan?" I said, the venom clear in my tone. "Ryan is gone, Emma. You're alone now. And everything you've lost is because of your own choices." As she crumpled into a heap of tears, I walked away. But there was one last thing I needed to do. Ryan's downfall wasn't complete until I had him begging for mercy. I personally called him that night, his phone ringing like the final toll of a bell. "Is this Ryan?" I said, my voice smooth yet dripping with satisfaction. "Who is this?" he barked, panicked. "It's your worst nightmare," I replied, smiling at the thought of his desperation. "I've made sure your business is finished. And now I'm calling to let you know your future's in the hands of your creditors. They won't wait long." Ryan stammered, trying to find his words. You can't do this. I'll ruin you. I'm Ryan." "I already ruined you," I interrupted. "And I've only just begun." I hung up, leaving him in a cold silence that mirrored the emptiness I felt in his loss. And so, everything came to an end. Emma lost me. Ryan lost everything he'd worked for. And I walked away, a man reborn, free from the chains of betrayal. Weeks passed after the final confrontation. Emma and Ryan were out of my life, leaving behind the wreckage of their actions. My life had taken a turn I never imagined, but it was one I had crafted with every step I took. There was no more regret, no more pain, just a quiet, resolute sense of peace. The kids were staying with me now. I'd fought for them and won. Emma's attempts to plead with the court fell on deaf ears. She had no ground to stand on, and I had proof of her betrayal and negligence. She tried to spin it as a cry for help, but the truth was in the details. Her affair, her lies, her choice to betray the family. But I wasn't going to let her take my children from me. I had promised myself I would be the one who raised them, who showed them what real love and loyalty looked like. And that's exactly what I did. The kids, though still processing the loss of their mother, found solace in the stability I was now able to provide. It wasn't an easy road, but it was a better one than the one Emma had left them on. We spent more time together, talking, laughing, just being a family again. They saw the changes in me, how much stronger I had become, and slowly they began to heal. As for me, I was learning to live again. I rediscovered passions I'd buried under the weight of betrayal. I started to travel more, taking time for myself, pursuing hobbies I'd forgotten I loved. And soon I realized I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. But the most unexpected part, the thing I never saw coming, was how I started to rebuild my own happiness. I met someone new, a woman who understood the depths of what I had been through. She didn't push me to move on, but simply allowed me to be myself. Slowly, we started building something together, a foundation based on trust, honesty, and understanding. And though the scars of the past would always remain, they became reminders, not of weakness, but of the strength I gained through it all. Emma and Ryan were distant memories, a part of my past I no longer feared. I had faced the worst, and come out the other side stronger, wiser, and free. And as for the future, it was mine to shape. The days turned into months, and I found myself standing at a place I hadn't imagined possible when all this started. Peace. Not the calm before the storm, not the quiet before the next challenge, but actual, genuine peace. I had everything I needed: my kids, my integrity, my strength. At night, I would sit with a glass of whiskey in hand, watching the stars outside my window. It was the kind of night where thoughts are heavy, but the mind is clear. I reflected on everything that had happened: the lies, the betrayal, the revenge. And while I had felt justified in my actions, part of me knew it wasn't the revenge that had truly healed me. It was forgiveness. Not for Emma or Ryan, but for myself. I had spent so long clinging to anger and pain, letting them define me. I had made them my identity, allowing my past to dictate my present. But as I stood there, alone, in the quiet of the night, I realized that the true power wasn't in punishing those who wronged me. It was in letting go of the weight they left behind. I didn't need to carry that anger anymore. The betrayal wasn't mine to own. Emma and Ryan had chosen their paths, and I had chosen mine. My journey wasn't just about making them pay for what they did to me. It was about rediscovering myself, finding out who I truly was. When the masks came off and the lies were stripped away, I had learned that revenge doesn't bring healing. Closure does. And sometimes closure doesn't come from the other person. It comes from within. The night I stood alone by the window, I made a vow to myself: no more looking back. The past was a lesson, not a prison, and I had no intention of letting it lock me in anymore. Tomorrow, I would wake up to a new day, with no baggage holding me down. And, for the first time in what felt like forever, I would be able to breathe deeply, knowing I had fully stepped into a future of my own making. As the months rolled by, I watched my life transform in ways I couldn't have imagined at the beginning of this journey. The man I was before, lost, hurt, consumed by anger, was gone. In his place stood someone stronger. Someone who knew that his worth didn't lie in the betrayal he had suffered, but in the way he overcame it. Emma's betrayal, Ryan's treachery, they were all behind me now. Their voices, Their manipulations no longer had any hold over my life. The house we once shared, the life we built, had crumbled into dust. But out of that dust, I had rebuilt something far stronger, a future I could be proud of. I was no longer the man who lived in the shadow of what others had done to him. I was free. And as I closed this chapter of my life, I could finally say, without regret, that I had come out of it victorious. Not because I sought revenge or because I wanted to make them suffer, but because I had chosen to live for myself. And in that, I had found peace. The story of betrayal, heartbreak, and revenge was now behind me. The story of moving on, of strength, and of creating a future in my own image. This was my new story. And I walked into the future knowing that no one, not even the ones who hurt me the most, could ever take that away from me.